This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
I'm Jessica.
And Rochelle's gone.
Yeah. I was like, I'm waiting for something and it's not coming.
Rochelle is not joining us tonight. Her car broke down and she's having some issues getting to and from. And so she is dealing with all that craziness. So wish her good car luck.
Yep, because cars suck.
Yeah, they do.
So Ashley's going to be doing a stalking case this week.
Yes.
And I'm going to be talking about the history between Russia and Ukraine, because I know that it's obviously all the media is about right now. But a lot of people don't know why it's happening. So yeah. I felt like I could probably shed some light on that. And it was very interesting to learn. So I hope you all enjoy it.
Yeah. So we're going to, when Jessica starts her story, it's not going to be our usual, I think, comedic. I think we're very funny.
I do too.
Interjection. I'm just going to let her tell the history. We're going to keep it very kind of serious and, because of everything's going on. And then we're going to link a couple charities in our show notes. So if you can give the different things, please do so. If you can't, just keep them in your thoughts and prayers and whatever you subscribe to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then one other thing. Next week, I will not be here either, but Rochelle will be back. I am surprise visiting my mom for her birthday with me and her grandson. And let's be honest, the grandson is really the exciting part.
Yep.
So I won't be here next week. It'll be Jessica and Rochelle, but then the whole gang will be back together the following week.
Yeah. Unless I decide to have a mental breakdown or something.
Whatevs. One of those.
See. We'll see what happens.
Jessica's got a lot on her plate.
Yeah. I'm just going with the flow.
Okay, so I did another stalker case because these are probably the most terrifying cases for me. Yeah. Because it's you don't even this, it's just crazy. The things people can make up in their heads and that you have no idea are going on,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so I got this from Obsession Dark Desires.
Ooh, your favorite.
I do really like that show. The reenactments are so cheesy. I love it so much.
Oh my gosh.
Because
I could watch it.
They're so cheesy that it brings a comedic relief to the horrible story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good. Just like us, we're comedic relief.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, exactly. We're funny to ourselves.
All right. Our story starts November 1994 in Concord, California. Ooh. So Mary McIntyre had just packed up after the death of her father in Charlotte, North Carolina, and decided to move to Concord, California, where her mom was. And her mom ran a family business called Contra Costa Awards and Embroidery. And so Mary moved there to help her with the business. And the business was booming. And basically they made awards and t-shirts and stuff like that. So business was booming, so much so that they needed to hire extra help. They put an ad in the paper because, this is pre-internet. Yep. And right away, Josel Bolowin answered the ad. They didn't have many applicants, so Josel got the job. Mary thought he was a good match. Regardless of the low amount of applicants, she said she would have hired him anyway.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So once he started, Mary was his sole trainer, so that he was with her most of the time. He started, just asking regular friendly questions, where you start to get to know a coworker, do you have family? Do you have kids? Blah, blah, blah. And Josel at this time revealed that he had a son, but his son died when he was a baby.
Aww.
Okay, so Mary started noticing that, as she said, Josel only seemed to have eyes for her. She said that he wasn't rude to the other employees and he didn't straight up ignore them, but he just spent a lot more of his focus on Mary. So about a month after Josel started, Mary was going back into work later in the evening to train him some more because she has two kids. So like she went home, tucked the kids into bed, and then went back.
Yeah.
And when Mary, this is so creepy. When Mary showed up, Josel had brought dinner for the both of them and lit a candle for them.
Ew.
Yeah. Mary said, thanks, but I ate at home. She wanted to keep it professional. She was married,
Yeah.
but Josel was being fucking weird.
Oh, she's married?
Yeah, she's married.
Oh.
So,
Josel.
yeah. So she figured, oh, he probably has like a little crush on me, but, I'll just keep pushing off his advances, saying no, and hopefully he would get the hint. But obviously, since I'm talking about this, he did not get the hint.
Nope.
So at this point, the documentary did some really creepy reenactment.
Oh, no.
They had Joseph listening to the voicemail Mary left him about his interview like the month prior. And like when she would say his name, he would like close his eyes. And then he was like picturing her with matching red nails and lips, like beckoning him to come hither.
Ew.
It was really weird and really uncomfortable. And I really hated it. So another creepy thing that happened was one day Mary went and got a haircut, and then she went into work shortly before close because she did a lot of work after hours. I think that's when they did a lot of their like printing and stuff.
Yeah.
And Josel was there and he said, I like your haircut, Mary, and your earrings. You look beautiful. And it puts the lotion on the skin or it gets the hose again. I'm just kidding. He didn't say that last part.
Oh my God.
But he did say she looked beautiful and it was really creepy. And it really reminded me of Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, is that what that was from?
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Jessica.
Ashley.
It's one of my favorites. It's so good.
Is it?
Oh my God. It's so good.
Oh,
You should watch
maybe
it.
I'll have to watch it.
You
Yeah.
should. It's so fucking good. Are you okay? What happened?
My cat just attacked my leg. Okay, let's go.
So anyway, Mary said, okay, creep, let's get to work. Just kidding. She just said, let's get to work. But she said she wasn't feeling safe at work anymore. Like she was getting a creepy vibe from him. And she worked a lot of nights alone with him. So that same night, he walked into her office and said, things are really starting to come together, aren't they? And Mary was like, oh, shit. She goes, yeah, your work is coming along great. You're doing a really great job. I'm really impressed with your work.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, I mean, things are coming together between us.
Ew.
Mary said she was super uncomfortable and nobody else was there. So she was kind of scared. She said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he goes, that conversation we had over dinner. And remember, she didn't have dinner with him.
Yeah.
So Mary was like, it's late. Let's just call it a day. She said he looked really disappointed. And I hate this. She started blaming herself. She's like, well, maybe I could have said something that, he took the wrong way. Maybe I did something.
Why is it always like the victim?
I know. I hated that for her. So almost 3 months after hiring Josel, Mary felt like she needed to let him go. Like his behavior was escalating. He was being a big old creep and she was just done.
It wasn't very professional either.
Yeah. And she said he was a really good worker, but he was just making her feel unsafe. So she called him and left a message, which was kind of, but she left a message saying that since the Christmas rush was over, they wouldn't need him anymore. And so, he didn't need to come back in. Well, this pissed Josel right the fuck off. And one day, Mary received a call at home from Josel.
Oh, no. Thank you.
I know. He said, I miss you. I want to see you. I thought you could bring the kids to the park and I could meet you there. And she was like, no. And he was like, please, Mary, I need to see you. And Mary said, I'm not interested in seeing you. Don't call me again.
Yeah.
At this point, he was following Mary, but she had no idea. until one day he showed up at work on Mother's Day with a flower for her and a cassette tape.
Ew.
Mary basically kicked him out and later found out that he had brought the same type of flower for her mom.
Ew.
Mary threw everything away except for the tape. And on the outside, the tape had written, "Dreams beyond control."
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Ew.
He called her again and she said, "Stop calling me." He said, "I have feelings for you and I can't control them." Mary said that at this point, his fantasy was overriding his reality. So nothing she said would matter. In his mind, they were
Yeah.
in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 months after laying off Giselle, he calls again. She tells him to stop calling her. And he says, "Don't forget, it's my birthday soon."
Ew. I'm sorry. Did you say 6 months?
Yeah.
Ew.
And she tells him, "Go away," and hangs up the phone. So the
Okay.
day after his birthday, Mary woke up and went in her backyard and saw that her kids, they had these like riding bouncies, were all deflated.
Oh no.
She assumed it was Giselle, and he did call later that day and she hung up on him. He called right back and she told him to stop, that he was really scaring her. But he called again and yelled, "Where's the baby you promised me?" What? Apparently, he had a fantasy that Mary said she would give him another son on his birthday. So after this, Mary called the phone company and had his number blocked. They said that he would get a message saying something like, "You're not able to reach this number. This number's blocked." So Mary was hoping he would get the hint, but like he's crazy, so probably not.
Mm-hmm. And she hasn't got to the cops?
Not yet.
Oh.
A few days later, Mary and her husband left for Hawaiian vacation.
Ooh.
Yeah. And when she got back, Mary called her mom to check in, tell her all about her vacation. And her mom said that Josel had been coming in and asking for her 3 or 4 times in the past week.
Oh, I hate it.
Mary finally told her mom that he was scaring her and filled her in on what was going on. And her mom said, "Come pick me up. We're going to go to the police." So they went to get a restraining order and had an independent server try to serve him papers, but they only had one address for him and he wasn't there anymore. So they weren't able to serve him.
Stupid.
Yeah. Later on Mary's birthday, her mother was at the store and Joselle was in the parking lot and asked, like, "Hey, is Mary working?" And her mom was like, "No." So he gave her mom a box to give to Mary. And in the box were 2 vases and a poem called "Enchanting as It May Seem."
Yeah. What? What?
And here's the poem.
No.
I've
No.
dreamed I've dreamed of an empire where only I can be king, to live life to its fullest, to live life to its fullness and share the blessings. So I ask for your heart to stand beside me and make you my queen. We'll live happily ever after.
That's heinous.
Yeah. Shortly after that, he came into the store again asking for her. Her mother told him to get out. Mary came to the front and was like, "Here's your box. I don't want it. I don't want to see you. I will get a court order and hunt you down if you come back. We're putting an end to this. Get out."
Good.
So after that, months and months passed and Mary hadn't heard from him. She thought she was safe. So I don't get this next part, but she thought she was safe. So she took the phone block off. I'm not really sure why she did that. Like, why wouldn't you just keep it on just in case?
Literally.
Yeah. But guess what? He immediately called her, sobbing, saying he's been trying to call her and that he misses her. She hangs up the phone and walks away. And she said it was horrible because she had started to feel safe again. And then this like completely brought her back into the space, the headspace that she was in.
Yeah.
So one day she's at work, just doing her thing, working, and she feels hands on the back of her neck.
Oh, no.
She turns around and it's him with a gun.
What?
He tells her that she will die for what she's done to him.
Okay, well, that's escalated.
Yeah. A coworker walks by and sees him, and she yells at him to go get help, so he takes off. And the distraction allowed Mary to shove Joselle and take off running, but he caught up to her and dragged her back inside.
Oh, no.
Her mother was still in the back and came rushing up to the front, and Joselle told her to say goodbye to her daughter. She yelled at her mom to leave, and Joselle told her to get out as well. He then basically takes Mary hostage and says, "You promised me and I trusted you."
Oh.
He said that Mary was a psychic and was predicting the future for him. He told her that she sat in the corner and told him she'd have a special present for him on his birthday.
Oh.
And she was like, "I never did that. I never said that." And that would just like make him angrier and angrier because it wasn't
Well,
going with his
yeah.
fantasy that he created in his head.
Yeah, exactly.
So by now the police have shown up to the scene. And they called Joselle, and he did let Mary answer it, but he quickly changed his mind and told her to hang up. The police called again and again. Mary said they called over 100 times, but he wouldn't answer.
What?
He finally lets her answer again. They asked to speak to Joselle. And as Mary hands him the phone, he hangs it up. So they're into this situation for 4 hours.
Oh my goodness gracious.
And finally, Joselle picks up the phone and calls his girlfriend.
What?
Yeah. He told her to go back to their place and read a letter he had there, or he had left there.
Okay.
After this conversation, she noticed that Joselle was softer. He wasn't as angry. And he said, "I want you to take me out." And Mary thought he meant like walk him out to the police. He was like, "No, I want you to kill me."
What?
She obviously said no.
Good.
And he said, "You ruined my life with your lies, and now you need to finish it." He grabbed her hands and put them on the gun and put it to his head. But she couldn't do it. He then said, "We'll both go." He put his head next to her head and the gun on the other side so it would go through the both of them.
Ew.
And she's like crying and like, saying, "Please no, please no, please no." He then started trying to kiss her and put his hand down her shirt.
Ew.
She told him to stop and shoved him away. And then he gave her the gun and put it to his head again. But she couldn't do it. She couldn't pull the trigger. But then she finally did. She pulled the trigger, dropped the gun, and ran outside.
Oh my gosh.
When the SWAT team went in, they found his body dead on the floor.
What?
She said that she thinks that he felt like she ruined his life, and so he would ruin her life by having her kill him and having to live with that the rest of her life.
That's brutal.
So she obviously is very traumatized.
Yeah.
She was never charged with anything because, she was acting in self-defense.
Yeah.
But she did say that she remarried, so it must have broken apart her marriage.
Oh, that's so sad.
So the day after the shooting, the police found Joselle's suicide note.
Oh.
And it said, "From the voice on my message recorder, I felt excitement I never felt before. There stood a woman who I felt was going to be part of me for the rest of my life. I felt so high on life. As time was getting close to my birthday, my anticipation grew with excitement of a new life. I felt something was dying inside of me, and it fucking hurt so bad. Alive or dead, I will come for this woman, for I was left with no choice. Farewell to all who gaze their eyes upon this last and final testament of my life."
That's grotesque.
Yeah.
Yuck.
And that is the story of the stalking of Mary McIntyre.
I really liked it.
Thanks. It was pretty shocking. When they said that she actually shot him, I was like, oh.
Well, it escalated so much from simple stalking to gun to the back of her head. It's what the shit?
Yeah.
And then it's him wanting her to kill him. What?
Crazy.
All
right, so let's get to this. So it is going to be, as Jessica said, very history intensive. So if you love history, buckle up. And as I said, I'm just going to sit back and listen.
Yeah, and it's going to be pretty heavy factually. So sorry, but it is very important to know what's going on throughout history. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm going to talk about 9 milestones throughout history that kind of led up to this moment. And when my thing will load, I'll tell you
all about it.
Okay, so I got all of my information from History Extra. they had a really good article laying everything out. So if you don't know, like if you are currently living not surrounded by media, which kudos to you because it
Yeah.
all sucks right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched a military attack against Ukraine. Explosions have been heard around the country as Russian tanks and troops have poured in around the borders. And while we may not know what's going on, a lot of us aren't aware of the reasoning behind all of this. So I'm going to tell you. Um, I I attempted to look up pronunciations.
Mm.
I like I spent hours trying to find pronunciation. But some of the names are from centuries ago, so the pronunciations are not available. So I will do my very best.
And it's a different language, so
Two different languages.
yeah.
So, yeah. All right, let's try this. To best explain what's going on, Professor Suri Yakelchik lays out 9 particular moments in history between Russia and the Ukraine, dating back to the 9th century.
Wow.
Russia and Ukraine have been at odds for the past 8 years, with Russia seizing and establishing military authority over Ukraine's southern Crimean Peninsula in 2014, taking advantage of political chaos in the neighboring country. The ensuing conflict between Ukraine's military and Russian-backed separatists and Russian forces in Ukraine's 2 eastern regions, collectively known as the Donbass, has never formally ended. And there's been an estimated 14,000 people killed and 1.5 million people displaced to date.
Wow.
Which I didn't know about any of this.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Like I thought that this was something that just kind of started now, but it's been years in the making.
Yeah, I mean, I knew there was like a history because, Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union and they're looking at joining NATO. So I knew like that stuff, but I didn't know that there had been like deaths and displacement.
Yeah, I know, because we think that it's all just happening right now.
Right.
Okay, so there has been rising anxiety in recent weeks about a massive buildup of Russian troops along the Ukrainian border, maybe as many as 150,000. But Putin has rejected any plans for an invasion. Russian authorities issued an ultimatum to the West in January, requesting formal guarantees that NATO will not expand further east. So what is NATO? It is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and it was created by signing a document known as the Washington Treaty on April 4th, 1949 by 12 founding members. These members included the UK, Canada, and the US, although NATO was meant to encourage wider collective action. The 14 articles of the treaty define the alliance's essential purpose: to safeguard the freedom and security of its members through political and military means. Ukraine and other former Soviet governments, according to President Putin, should never be admitted to the organization. Sergei Rybkov, Russia's deputy foreign minister, compared the situation to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, which was a tense 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union over the placement of nuclear missiles in Cuba, that historian Mark White dubbed as the most dangerous encounter in human history. Russia, on the other hand, has launched a full-scale military invasion of Ukraine and has demanded that the army in Kyiv, the country's capital, lay down its arms. Putin, according to the EU, has sparked the greatest conflict in Europe since World War II. So, the history of the Ukraine. So, the Ukraine is situated in Eastern Europe, and it's sandwiched between Russia and the EU/NATO member countries of Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. Ukraine is bordered in the north by Belarus and on the south by Moldova. Ukraine shares a border with Russia, which is very important to remember. Ukraine and Russia are two sovereign countries that arose after the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991. Ukraine, on the other hand, has strong social, cultural, and economic ties with Russia as a former Soviet republic. The vast majority of the world views Russia's 2014 invasion of Crimea as an illegal occupation. The annexation of Crimea by Russia was the first time since World War II that a European state has annexed another's territory. Russian volunteers and regular military are also present in the two self-proclaimed pro-Russian People's Republics in the Donbass region near the Russian border, despite Russian government denials. So that's that. We'll leave that at that. This goes back to the 9th century, as I had previously mentioned. A group of Norsemen known as the Rus took control of the East Slavic settlements in what is now northwest Russia in the late 9th century. Then they marched down the Dnieper River to declare Kiev in what is now Ukraine, their capital. Kievan Rus is the name historians give to this enormous medieval state. The local Slavic population began to refer to themselves as the people of Rus, or Rusians, after the Norse elite assimilated. The Rus realm was centered in what is now central Ukraine, and Moscow was founded in the 12th century on what was then a remote northeastern boundary. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Grand Prince Volodymyr adopted Christianity from Byzantium in 988, holy shit, and died in 1015. So that was a long time ago. Few Russians studied or spoke Old Church Slavonic, the literary language of the church and state. Instead, they spoke a variety of East Slavic dialects that would later give rise to the Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Russian languages. The Mongol kingdom swiftly overcame the loose federation of Rus principalities in the mid-13th century, yet the glorious legacy of medieval Rus is still contested between Russia and Ukraine. Now, we are in the 1654. The Grand Principality of Moscow and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, the latter eventually joining with Poland, partitioned the old Rus territory, taking advantage of the waning of Mongol dominance in the late 14th century. On Poland's southern border, a new social group of Ukrainian Cossacks emerged to protect the country against Crimean Tatar incursions. The Cossacks of Ukraine were a significant group of free people, many of whom were fugitive peasant serfs who defined Poland's southern steppe border against Turkish and Tatar assaults. Although the notion of Ukraine existed at the time, residents continued to refer to themselves as Russians while referring to future Russians as Muscovites. Could not find a pronunciation for that.
Sounds right.
Thank you. By the early 17th century, Catholic Poland's religious policies and the expansion of serfdom, a sort of slavery in which peasants were linked to the land and sold with it, had enraged the Orthodox Christian people of the Ukrainian regions. A Cossack insurrection led by Hetman, which was a military leader. So Hetman is military leader in whatever language.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I could not find a pronunciation for this man's name, so I'm just going to wing it.
Okay.
His name was Bohdan Khmelnytsky. Yeah, okay. And in 1648, he turned into a mass social and religious battle against Polish control, ending in the establishment of the Hetmanate. Oh, there we go. A Cossack government allegedly nominally autonomous, but actually was independent. In search of friends against Poland, Khmelnytsky accepted the Orthodox Russian Tsar's protection in the 1654 Treaty of Pereyaslav. Although the exact definition of protection is still questioned, future Russian policies influenced the absorption of Cossack territory, particularly after Hetman Ivan Mazeppa's failed effort to separate from Moscow in 1709. So in 1876, Catherine II abolished the Hetmanate in 1764, wiping off the last vestiges of Ukrainian autonomy, while the Russian army demolished the Cossack stronghold on the Dnieper in 1765. Although Cossack officers might claim noble title, the empire agreed to recognize them as equals to Russian nobility if they could furnish the necessary documentation. But Ukrainian peasants were unfortunately enslaved. Catherine acquired a huge stretch of Ukrainian regions that Poland had retained after 1654 during the partitions of Poland in the late 18th century. Under the impact of pan-European Romanticism, new interest in Ukrainian history and folklore arose among intellectuals as the Hetmanate's institutional legacy was dissolved. Taras Shevchenko, Ukraine's national bard, published his first poems in Ukrainian in the 1840s and later co-founded a secret political group to explore the formation of a free Slavic federation and the elimination of serfdom.
Good.
Isn't that awesome, though?
Yeah.
Just a lowly bard.
What is a bard?
Have you seen The Witcher?
Yes.
Yeah, the guy that sings. He's a bard.
Oh,
He sings and tells stories.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Stories and poems and songs. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's a bard.
Okay.
He's literally called the Bard.
Oh, I forgot. It's been a while.
Oh, love gesture. Okay. In the westernmost Rus regions, which moved from Poland to the Austrian Empire, the Ukrainian national renaissance was also in full swing. In 1863, concerned Russian authorities responded by prohibiting the publication of educational literature printed in Ukrainian. Boo. While on vacation at Bad Ems, Germany in 1876, Tsar Alexander II signed the Ems Act, which outlawed all publications in the Ukrainian language. The empire continued to encourage assimilation to Russian culture by rewarding those loyal Ukrainians it regarded to be part of the wider Russian people's Little Russian tribe, while discriminating against politicized Ukrainians through job losses, arrests, and exile. Ukrainian patriots began to refer to themselves as Ukrainians to distinguish themselves from Russians. 1918, following the collapse of the Russian monarchy in 1917, as a result of war and political strife, patriotic Ukrainians formed the Central Council, which quickly evolved into a revolutionary parliament. And just to give a little bit more context, the fall of the Russian monarchy was when I was telling the story of the Romanovs and when the Romanov family was all murdered with Anastasia.
Somehow completely in my head disconnected the Romanovs from Russia. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I'm going to be talking about the Bolsheviks in my next point, and those were the ones that captured them and murdered them.
Okay.
Yep. So, just to tie some stories together.
Yeah.
The Ukrainian People's Republic was established by the Russian Provisional Government, but the Bolsheviks refused to recognize it and invaded Ukraine to incorporate it into the Soviet Union. Oh. I skipped a line. So after the fall of the Russian monarchy, as a result of war and political strife, patriotic Ukrainians formed the Central Council, which quickly evolved into a revolutionary parliament. There we
go. Okay.
Yeah. Before the Bolsheviks, the UNR declared full independence in January 1918 and signed a peace deal with the Central Powers in Brest. The UNR regained power after the First World War and declared unification with Ukrainian areas of the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, but the German authorities appointed a Ukrainian king under the ancient title of Hetman, which is military leader. The UNR was unable to withstand the titanic clash between the Russian Reds and Whites during the Russian Civil War, as neither power recognized Ukrainian sovereignty. However, the precedent of Ukrainian independence forced the Bolsheviks to create a Soviet Ukrainian Republic, which became a founding member of the Soviet Union in 1922. Stalin, on the other hand, returned to the unfinished mission of smashing the Ukrainian political nation that had evolved during the revolution in the early 1930s. Some 4 million Ukrainian peasants died in the state-engineered famine of 1932 to 1933.
The state-engineered famine?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Which is known in Ukraine as the Holodomor, which means death by starvation.
That's awful.
And it's widely regarded as a genocide.
Wow.
A perspective that is increasingly acknowledged around the world, but which Russia denies.
Of course.
Stalin also demolished Ukraine's cultural elite and promoted the Tsarist image of Ukrainians as Russia's younger brother. In 1945, following through on his agreement with Hitler to divide East Central Europe, Stalin invaded Poland in September 1939 and annexed the Ukrainian lands that Poland had retained following its brief war with the Bolsheviks in 1919, a stalemate that put an end to Lenin's dream of the Red Cavalry bringing revolution to Europe. Churchill and Roosevelt agreed to let Stalin maintain these regions at the Yalta Conference in 1945. Czechoslovakia was similarly urged by the Soviets to give up its Russian lands. Under the vigorous leadership of Nikita Khrushchev, the expanding Ukrainian SSR came to include practically all of the territories with an ethnic Ukrainian majority. Khrushchev thus realized a long-held goal of Ukrainian patriots, a unified Ukraine, but at the expense of Ukrainian sovereignty. He pursued a policy of cultural absorption into Russia. Ukrainian nationalists in the formerly Polish areas continued to resist Soviet administration with tenacity well into the 1950s. Moving on to 1954. Despite being merely connected to Ukraine by land, Crimea, which is Ukraine's southern Crimean peninsula, became an autonomous republic within Russia in 1921, owing to the territory's strategic importance. There were no Russians or Ukrainians in the majority, so the Soviets cultivated the culture of the Crimean Tatars, who had lived on the peninsula since the 13th century and whose Crimean Khanate, the Russian Empire conquered in 1783, in order to oppress Western colonies and newly independent Asian states with their ostensibly benevolent policies in the 1920s. However, after the Red Army retook Crimea from Nazi Germany in 1944, Stalin ordered the Tatars to be deported, which many historians also consider genocide. Sorry, this is heavy.
Yeah.
Ethnic Russians became a numerical majority almost overnight as a result of this deportation. The conflict had wreaked havoc on the peninsula's economy and cities. To commemorate the 300th anniversary of Pereslov, Khrushchev arranged for Crimea to be transferred to the Ukrainian SSR, which would reconstruct it and supply it with fresh water via a huge channel that was to be built. It also intended to appease the Ukrainian bureaucrats who made up his power base, as well as provide a culturally Russian counterbalance to the newly absorbed nationalistic Western provinces. In 1991, when Soviet communism was widely rejected as a result of Mikhail Gorbachev's loosening of ideological constraints, Ukrainian and Russian democratic activists collaborated to bring in new politics, such as freedom of expression and free elections. The administration of Russian President Boris Yeltsin did not seek to preserve the Soviet Union, but rather an autonomous Russia. As a result, Yeltsin became a natural ally of Ukrainian President Leonid Kravchuk. Sorry. These names are just... I'm just like very particularly trying to pronounce these properly, and I'm still probably butchering them. But only as long as both of them renounced the Soviet culture. The end of the Union was signaled by a vote in Ukraine in December 1991, and Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus began the formal dissolution process. With economic reforms failing in the early 1990s, Yeltsin and other Russian politicians began to pander to home nationalists nostalgic for the Soviet Empire by criticizing Ukrainian cultural practices and doubting Crimea's transfer. In 1997, Russia and Ukraine signed a comprehensive treaty affirming the integrity of Ukraine's borders, which was also guaranteed by Russia and the Western nuclear powers in the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, when Ukraine agreed to hand over its Soviet-made nuclear weapons. And I highlighted this next part. This agreement came to an end on March 31st, 2019.
Oh.
Yeah. To affirm the integrity of Ukraine's borders. And this came to an end 2 years ago. No, 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's 2022.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
That is crazy.
When a popular uprising in Ukraine ousted pro-Russian President Viktor Yanukovych and installed pro-Western democratic forces in power, an act backed by parliament and confirmed by snap presidential elections, Russian authorities took advantage of the chaos to establish military control over Crimea. They projected that the peninsula's Russian majority would support its inclusion into Russia, drawn by higher incomes and better employment opportunities without having to study Ukrainian. However, the phony referendum on joining Russia yielded improbable results, and the international community, with the exception of a few pro-Russian outliers, like as North Korea, Syria, and Venezuela, strongly disparaged the annexation. Russian authorities in Crimea began repressing local Ukrainian and Crimean Tatar activists in response to harsh Western sanctions. After securing control of Crimea, Russia instigated uprisings in other southeastern Ukrainian provinces where the powerful regional parties had long fostered pro-Russian sentiment. However, this tactic was successful only in the Donbass, a devastated industrial region with a large Russian-speaking population. When Ukrainian troops attempted to retake control, President Putin's government ordered regular army personnel to support pro-Russian rebels and Russian volunteers in a clandestine operation. And, as mentioned at the beginning of this part, I guess, the war's active phase lasted until the fall of 2015, with renewed intensification in 2017 and early 2020, resulting in an estimated 14,000 deaths and 1.5 million people displaced. And then we're in 2021.
Oh.
The Donbass War never officially ended. Low-intensity fire continues on a daily basis, and casualties are reported weekly. By convening conferences in the Normandy format, Western intermediaries helped de-escalate military action in 2015, which was Germany, France, Russia, and Ukraine. The Minsk Protocol of 2015, signed during the summit in Belarus's capital, charted a path to a peaceful resolution, but it remains blocked because certain steps are unacceptable either to Ukraine, which is a proposal to allow local elections to take place in the two people's republics, despite the presence of Russian troops there without having established Ukraine's control over its border with Russia, or to Russia, which is to acknowledge the presence of its troops and withdrawing them. So it's kind of a bit of a stalemate. Late in 2021, Western and Ukrainian intelligence services shared information regarding a huge buildup of Russian troops around the Ukrainian border, as well as infrastructure preparations for an assault. Russian officials insisted that the exercises were merely military drills, but they also issued an ultimatum to the West, demanding written guarantees against NATO's further eastern expansion, restrictions on the types of weapons placed in NATO members' countries since 1997, and a halt to any NATO military cooperation with other post-Soviet states, notably Ukraine and Georgia. Meanwhile, Russian news outlets raised fears of a NATO strike on Russia and or a Ukrainian offensive in the Donbass. And that is the history between Russia and Ukraine. I hope it shed some light on a few things. It sure did for me, and it was very interesting to learn. And it's very sad. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. So instead of doing jokes, I thought that we could do some interesting facts about Ukraine.
That sounds wonderful.
And I don't know, there's been a couple large creators on TikTok that have showed the video. The Russian ambassador trying to explain away their invasion of Ukraine by saying they were looking for oil or something, and a good number of UN members got up and walked out while he was talking. And that is unheard of.
Yeah, no, the one guy apparently used to work at the UN, and he said that's not something that ever happens.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that the world is supporting.
Yeah, even China has started to back away from Russia. So
good. That's awesome.
Okay, one of the, I think, most interesting facts about Ukraine is about their president.
Ooh, I love him. I love him. He was a comedian.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. He was a comedian on the show, which loosely translated was called Servant of the People. He played the role of the president of Ukraine. And it was so popular that they were joking like, hey, you should actually be president of Ukraine. And so in 2019, he ran and he won.
Oh, he's so cute.
I know.
I love him.
And he's like, I mean, he's on the media, on the news, like he is there in Kyiv. He is in it. You know, he is not leaving. I know a lot of NATO countries have offered to pull him out, and he's like, no, I'm staying with my country, which is honorable.
Amazing.
Yeah. All right, so some interesting facts. Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe, because Russia is in Asia. I don't know. Yeah. But it is the biggest country in Europe. The total area of Ukraine is 603.55 square kilometers. It's not, although, the biggest in terms of population, but there is a metro station that is the deepest metro station in the world.
I don't know how to feel about that.
In Ukraine.
I don't know how to feel about that.
It is 105.5 meters deep.
Ew.
Escalators take you deep down so that you can catch the train. It had to be that deep because it has to bypass a river, which runs above Kyiv and surrounds it.
The Neep River. I don't know.
Yeah, didn't like the Dnieper,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dnieper River. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Speaking of which, I'm getting these fun facts from a Duke International article.
yeah.
McDonald's in Kyiv is among the most visited McDonald's restaurants in the world.
Wow.
Ukraine is among the most educated nations in the world.
Wow. And this horrible stuff is happening to them.
I know. It says Ukraine stands fourth in the world in terms of most educated population. 99.4% of Ukrainians aged 15 and over can read and write. 70% of adult Ukrainians have a secondary or higher education.
Nice.
They have a national costume. Yeah, it's differentiated from others because of its embroidery work, which features Ukrainian embroidery.
Cute.
And that's what I have for interesting facts.
I love it.
Oh,
I hope they win. Yeah.
And we hope that this was informative for everyone.
Yeah.
And all of our thoughts and well wishes go out to the people of Ukraine.
100%.
Yeah. And, I do feel for the Russian people.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, they're out there protesting and getting arrested. And they, those that aren't swayed by the Russian propaganda know what's going on and they don't want it.
Exactly. And that's the heartbreaking thing, right? It's like a lot of people are very quick to just damn the whole country.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that are fighting against it.
Yeah.
We need to keep them in our thoughts too.
Yeah. And I think one of the sad things too is that, all these sanctions that are being put on Russia, which rightly so, it's going to affect the poorest of the Russian population before Putin even, feels it. But
yeah,
either way, everything is lose for people over there. But yeah. So, well, if you want more of us, you can find us on historiesandmysteries.ca. We are also on Facebook and Instagram, Histories and Mysteries.
And if you'd like to rate and review us, we would really appreciate it. You can do so on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And we're going to post some links in our show notes of places that you can donate or help out with. And if you have any other questions, just feel free to email us.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Bye.
Bye.